right, welcome back. We're live inside the Prop Swap studios of AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. The brackets are set and looks pretty wide open. So plenty to get to tonight and throughout the week. But in the middle of all that talk, not the middle with Eitan, Harry, and Barrett Brooks, but John McMullen, our NFL Eagles insider, will join us every night at 7:30. Follow John at JF McMullen. PhillyVoice.com and SI.com is where you can find the written work and host of Extending the Play every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. right here on 1490. Johnny Mac, how we doing, man?
Doing well. How are you, Ryan?
Doing well. Doing well. There's, man, you look at NFL Twitter today, and there is just a ton happening.
Busy day.
Yeah, I'm sure you were busy.
Not for the Eagles, though.
Well, yeah, that's sort of par for the course, right?
Well, not really. I mean, they've been players in free agency before, but I think fans get used to that. I've tried to explain my cycle theory and where the Eagles are. It's not really a theory. It's what it is. It's what the NFL salary cap is. And the Eagles are in a position where they don't have a ton of money to spend, so they can't be involved with these big deals on day one of free agency. Anybody who was expecting difference was ultimately always going to be upset. But I don't know how you didn't figure it out.
So let's start with the Green Goblin, I guess. That probably makes the most sense for us here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the good news, by the way, for the Eagles. There weren't a ton of really impactful free agents that they had. So they're not going to be losing these ultra-talented people because they don't have the space for them. And Jalen Mills is probably the one guy you said you should probably want him back. You should probably bring him back. But he just got offered too much money from the New England Patriots. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about the type of player Bill Belichick likes and wants, and very versatile, high football IQ. And, Bill's a lot like Jim Schwartz. I mean, Bill Belichick started Jim Schwartz. So, we always talked about how much Jim Schwartz liked and respected Jalen Mills as a player. So it's not really a surprise that Bill Belichick does as well.
So I saw an article that you wrote on SI.com from January, because you just kind of put this back out there on Twitter. Your top two, unrestricted free agents that you felt like the Eagles should have brought back. Why don't you just fill us in there?
Yeah, it was Jalen Mills and Rudy Ford. People laughed at me back then for saying Rudy Ford was number two, and sure enough, first was Jalen Mills, second was Rudy Ford. People generally don't care about special teams, but NFL teams do, and it's very important. And, it's interesting because Rudy had a bunch of soft tissue injuries last year, had some hamstring issues where he was in and out of the lineup, also had a groin. But, man, you rarely see a massive difference in coverage teams when he was out there versus when he wasn't. I mean, he's one of the best 2 or 3 players in the entire NFL when it comes to punt coverage, when it comes to being a gunner on the outside. He just dominates, and that's one of those selfless things, sort of like long snapper, same type of thing. You only notice the long snapper when he makes a mistake. Those gunners are a lot in the same way, and he dominated at that. And they're not expensive, but I guess for being a special teams gunner, Rudy's pretty expensive, and he got 2 years and a nice chunk of change from the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So Eagles DN Brandon Graham got restructured, I guess is the right way to put it here today as well. 1-year extension worth close to $20 million over 2 years per sources. What does that mean for the team and Brandon Graham and everything else?
Just that continual march to get under the cap. Remember, this is the so-called legal tampering period, which I hate that term. It's a negotiation period. The new league year, none of these deals that were reported today are official. None of them can be official until Wednesday, starting at 4 o'clock. That's when everybody has to be under the cap. So the Eagles can sign whoever they want, technically, right now. They don't have to be under the cap, but you got to get under the cap by Wednesday. So the latest number was about 17.8. They were over starting this morning. The NFLPA figures had them 17.8 over. Now that is, I'm told, before Brandon Brooks' extension was filed, and obviously Brandon Brooks is restructured. Brandon Graham actually got an extension. He got another year. So a little bit of a different tact, and they're going to spread his money out over that period. He also has some voidable years at the end, so we'll have to see how the numbers come in. Jake Elliott is another one that hasn't been filed, and that could get the Eagles down to the cap. We'll see. They might have one more in the pipeline as well, and that'll get them down to being cap compliant. But you need more than that to sign free agents, and certainly the guys that were going today, which a lot of them, got pretty significant deals. Joe Thuney, a lot of offensive linemen. Corey Lindsley, center from Green Bay, moves to the Chargers. Big-time contracts, and a lot of the pass rushers, but the Eagles couldn't be in that conversation. The one, John Johnson, the safety from the Rams, some people speculated the Eagles would be interested in that, but he got $11 million a year. They just can't. They don't have the financial wherewithal to be in those conversations right now.
So just to go with some, big news in the NFL overall, Drew Brees decides to hang it up. And obviously with this offseason being deemed the quarterback carousel offseason with so much potential movement coming up here, we'll see how much more actually occurs. But talk about Drew Brees, his legacy, and what the Saints' plans will be for this upcoming season in your mind.
Well, I mean, for Drew, obviously, he's a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't think he's that, sort of tippy top tier, obviously the Tom Brady, but even if your generation, his generation, Peyton Manning, I don't think he's up with those guys, but he's sort of that second tier, and obviously a Super Bowl winner, and the Saints have been really a Super Bowl contender for the vast majority of the latter points of his career. And if you go back to when he signed with New Orleans, Miami really wanted him first and had a deal cobbled out and worked out, according to Randy Mueller, and their doctors wouldn't clear him because he was coming off a shoulder injury. And it's interesting to see how, two teams and two franchises change so dramatically on something as simple as a doctor making a decision. And that's how simple it could be sometimes. But so as a player, no doubt about it, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest pure passers of all time. And then you talk about his community stuff. I mean, just that's even bigger than the amount of money he gave to the city of New Orleans, which obviously, if you go back to Katrina, had so many issues, and all the things he's done for that community. And I know he got in trouble for some things that people got upset about regarding the flag and Colin Kaepernick. But boy, man, I mean, if you're going to criticize somebody, how about criticizing somebody who hasn't done about 1 million more things for people than you have? I'm pointing at everybody, including myself, I mean, go pick on other people. Don't go pick on Drew Brees.
Yeah, it's spectacular what Brees has done in the community, and there was that issue I think in the summer where people were really attacking him for I forget even the exact reason, but just nonsense.
It was a flag and
right.
Kaepernick and that stuff.
Okay.
And he just gave his opinion.
Right.
It wasn't insulting other people, but you know how our society has gotten. But I'm just like, if you and let's face it, the vast majority of those people killing him have no idea what he's done for that community, and that's why it's frustrating, because you got a bunch of people that sit on social media, do nothing except insult others, criticizing people that do so much for actual communities. It's frustrating.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It's absolutely frustrating. So Drew Brees hangs it up. Legend, one of the all-time greats, especially in this era at the quarterback position. All right, so what's next here? There's just so much coming down the pipeline today in the NFL with players on the move, re-signings, signing with new teams, retirements between yesterday and today with Drew Brees. What's next for the Eagles, and how does this date impact it, and what are some of the next key deadlines and dates that you have your eye on, John?
Well, there's no real I mean, free agency is here. It'll start, as I said, officially on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. That's the start of the new league year. But you have the tampering period, the negotiation period, which we're in right now. So you're going to know where the vast majority of the high-profile free agents are going to sign before Wednesday. The key to the Eagles and the key for the Eagles is sort of that second wave or even the third wave. I mean, that's where they are. They have to make sound, prudent decisions with guys who may be under the radar, maybe veteran players, maybe really young players that haven't broke out, evaluate correctly, maybe one-year deals. And again, if you think about 2017, the Super Bowl year, that's the Chris Longs of the world, the Patrick Robinsons, the LeGarrette Blunts, all one-year deals. That's what the Eagles have to do this time around.
So what are some players that fit that mold that could be significant enough where you're, satisfied, or you say, okay, this could be an impact player on the field and an impact player off it as far as, the finances are concerned?
Well, I think if you look, Malik Hooker, you look at some of these guys I've mentioned, I predicted their splash would be Eric Wilson, the linebacker from Minnesota, because Jonathan Gannon has a history with him. The new linebackers coach, Nick Rollis, has a history with him. But he'd be sort of like the crown jewel. And, he's not a star player. But that's probably a guy you have to give multiple years. And then from there, you start talking about maybe I think the Eagles are in a different phase. So I don't know if you necessarily want the veteran players, but there are some younger players that are coming off injury. And typically you don't want that. You don't want guys coming off injury. But if they're young, you could sort of roll the dice, as opposed to, say, our old friend Ronald Darby, who got injured so much here in Philadelphia. He got a big money deal with Denver today. Those guys scare me, because he's coming off a pretty good year, but that injury history is pretty significant. Now you look at a Malik Hooker who was in Indianapolis with Gannon and Nick Sirianni, and had injury issues, but he's very young. Darian Conley was a former first-round pick at corner. The Eagles need corners. Had some issues. Maybe you take a flyer on him. Those, I think, are the type of players the Eagles have to be thinking about.
Talking with John McMullen, our NFL Eagles insider. Follow John on Twitter at JFMcMullen. PhillyVoice.com, SI.com is where you can find all of John's written work, and host of Extending the Play, which you can listen to every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. What about the rest of the NFC East, John? Anything today that stood out to you? And what are some of the big the big moves that still need to occur and that might occur here in the next couple weeks, whether it's with the Washington football team, the Giants, or the Cowboys. The Cowboys already made their big signing, keeping Dak around for a long time.
Yeah. Really, the entire NFC East wasn't very splashy. If you think about today, it was about the Patriots. It was about the Texans. The Patriots especially. I mean, they not only got Jalen Mills, they got Nelson Aguilar, a host of other players. Houston, and it's interesting because Houston's now run by Nick Caesaro, who was with New England for many, many years. So it's kind of interesting to have that pipeline. There were two teams were very, very active. But the NFC East as a whole wasn't very active. And you know, you mentioned Dallas having to pay as much money as they have to pay Dak Prescott. Washington has to figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position, number one. They lose Ronald Darby. I know the Giants were really in trying to get an edge rusher, and maybe that happens later today or tonight. But you look at Yannick Ngakoue, he went out to Las Vegas. Trey Hendrickson is still out there. Again, who knows, at least when we started this call. So there's some options, and they have at least some room to do some things, but the NFC East has been pretty quiet so far.
So I know the Eagles were at least looking, I don't know how realistic it was, but with safety John Johnson, and then he goes 3 years, basically $34 million with $24 guaranteed to the Browns. But that was a name that was at least associated with the Philadelphia Eagles. You can take that for what it's worth. He goes to the Browns. Jalen Mills goes to the Patriots. So does the secondary / DBs and safety spots become more of a priority now heading into the draft? Does it change the Eagles' plans heading into the draft, or is it still, the same plan?
Well, it's still way too early. I mean, they have to add at those positions, and they have to add multiple bodies. We talk now Jalen Mills is officially gone. I've mentioned Rodney McLeod is coming off a torn ACL. Not only is he coming off a torn ACL, he tore it in December. So you have to be concerned that when he's going to be ready and you start talking about, well, who do you have at safety? It's guys like Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace. So certainly not proven guys. So they want to get something in free agency, and that's where I bring up a player like Hooker, a former first-round pick, has a lot of talent but had injury issues. And the coaching staff knows him. Same thing as cornerback. After Darius Slay, you need cornerbacks. I mean, Avonte Maddox can't play outside. We all saw it. It's not going to work, and it's certainly not going to work with the new coaching staff. So that's where I mentioned Conley, similar first-round pick, had some issues. Maybe you take a flyer, but they have to add multiple bodies in the secondary. No question about it. So they're probably going to add not only people in free agency, but people in the draft as well.
All right, so let's stick with the draft for a second with about 10 minutes left here in this conversation, John. We've talked a lot about wide receiver. We've broken down everything from all angles as far as the Eagles and what they should, could, and will do with that 6th overall pick. Is there anything new that maybe we can discuss or any new angles as far as wide receiver, Kyle Pitts? I mean, I'd like to get back into that with you, whether any more news regarding wide receiver versus Pitts, because Pitts has been the growing popular name that's being thrown out associated with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I think maybe the more thing, I think you see some more people starting to think the Eagles will try to get cute, try to hope somebody will want to trade up. If you look at Carolina and Denver, both need quarterbacks. Carolina's really desperate for a quarterback, so you start thinking about, well, can we get them to trade up, and then we go down a couple spots and maybe get a Kyle Pitts or something of that nature. Do you want him to get that cute? I don't know. If it's receiver, I've said pretty consistently, I still believe Jamar Chase is not going to be there. If he was there, I know Daniel Jeremiah said he would run up and put the card in if Kyle Pitts was on the board. I would do that if Jamar Chase was on the board. That's the one no-brainer to me. If he's not there and you still want to go receiver, I would take Jalen Waddle over Devontae Smith. To me, he's more explosive. He was, he was the better player at Alabama. As hard as that is for people to believe, before he got hurt, he was a better player. So I don't know. If the Eagles are comfortable with a bunch of those guys, maybe then you start talking about dropping down a few slots, knowing you'll get somebody, whether it's, say, Devontae Smith or Kyle Pitts. But that's sort of what they're wrangling with. And, they want to – I don't think there's any question you'd like to take advantage of some quarterback-desperate teams, if possible, and we'll see how they go about it. If guys – who knows? If teams are so hell-bent on going up to get players like Trey Lance and Justin Fields, maybe the Eagles reconsider. Say, well, maybe we should look at these guys a little harder, but I doubt it.
We talk about Jalen Mills going off to the Patriots, Johnson, who is a name, going up to Cleveland. Caleb Farley, the corner from Virginia Tech, I see in some mocks going number 5 to Cincinnati, the Bengals. Is there any chance the Eagles get weird and go that type of direction?
A little bit. I would put that at like 10%. Corner is one of those positions where I think you do have some top 10 talent, and that's a position where generally it's a big enough sort of value on that position to take a player in the top 10 if you evaluate them. And most people have Caleb Farley as that guy if he were there at 6. But I do think, if you want to build around Jalen Hurts, you got to get this team some weapons. So I think that's the decree from the owner. So, look, a defensive player might help you win games, but it's not going to help the quarterback. You could win games ugly. You could get a top 10 defense, although the Eagles would have to do a lot more on the defensive side of the ball to get in that position. But again, you're not helping the quarterback. And if the Eagles truly want to build around Jalen Hurts, well, they got to stop the issues in the skill positions. We've been talking about them for years. And you look at somebody like Nelson Aguilar gets a 2-year deal, and it was for $26 million right now. That's not real money. We'll see when the real numbers come in. But you do see the way he excelled with the Raiders, and now the Patriots, who are obviously a very smart organization, are signing him. The Eagles didn't do a good job developing their players, so we got to throw that into the mix as well.
And I don't know if that's like that kind of goes into the conversations we were having last week, John, where Jeffrey Lurie says, no quarterback competition. And then to kind of parlay off of that, pun intended here on Sports Betting Radio, it's no, they can't get the, elite cornerback prospect because they need answers at the quarterback position right away. Once again, they may not be going best available or smartest approach. They're trying to get quick, instant gratification answers to solve this quarterback problem, and that may bite them in the rear even more.
Yeah, well, I think that's where we are by definition when the owner butts in. There's no getting around that. If he's butting in, you should take the best player, whoever he is. I think everybody understands that. Everybody should understand that. You should allow the personnel department to evaluate everyone and pick who they think is the best available option when you're up at number 6 overall. Unfortunately, I don't think that's on the table, most notably at quarterback, but I think also by extension of that, because of what the decree is, probably cornerback as well. And what hurts more is that they've invested so much in those positions. I think a lot of people say, because I've heard it numerous times, I'm sure you've heard it as well, Ryan, the Eagles didn't build up properly around Carson Wentz. Well, maybe so, but they tried. I mean, you know, whether you're talking about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside as a second-round pick, Jalen Reagor as a first-round pick, that's recent. I just talked about Nelson Aguilar. That's a first-round pick dating back. Andre Dillard is a first-round pick at left tackle. They tried to build up around Carson Wentz. They just failed, either missing out on draft choices or not developing the players properly, whatever you want to blame it on. They've been taking swings on the offensive side of the football. If anything, they haven't been taking as many swings on the defensive side, other than Derek Barnett. You know, we've talked about linebackers, the defensive backs. I mean, think about it. Rodney McLeod is signed in free agency. Jalen Mills was a 7th-round pick. Darius Slay was traded for. Avonte Maddox was a 4th-round pick. These were the starters from last year, you know. They'd love to take a shot with some 1s and 2s on that side of the football.
Yeah, they certainly would. All right. John McMullen, our NFL Eagles insider. Follow John on Twitter at JFMcMullen, Philly Voice, and SI.com. Saturday mornings, make sure you're tuning in to 1490 to listen to John on Extending the Play, 10 a.m. to 11. And John joins me every night at 7:30 for your Eagles football fix. All right, J-Mac, I appreciate it, man. We'll do it again here tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
Yep, thank you. There he is. Johnny Mac, dropping some knowledge.
The middle.
It's called the Gonza Fort Peninsula Park.
Looks nice.
It's a nice green space.
Right. Just looks like, you know, what's the park in the middle of New York?
Central Park?
Central Park, yeah.
Most famous park in the world.
Right. It's probably the most famous green space on the planet.
The Middle with Eitan Shander, Barrett Brooks, and Harry Mays. Weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern.